class. Okay, so just to go over this again briefly, right? Philosophy of Religion, meeting once a week, 4:45 to 6 on Mondays. Office hours before class or during the rest of the week after my other classes. And yes, everything is fluid. We don't know yet if we will be in person or not, or when. So I will be keeping in touch with all of you via Blackboard, via the announcements. So whatever I'm saying there, you can follow. And the next day of class is September 13th. Okay, in person normally. Okay, let's get into the syllabus. So here's what we're going to do this semester together. This is a class that I conceived, that I put together. I used to teach philosophy of religion kind of in a general way, and then I started to see that there was one question which kept coming up over and over again in my students' papers, and this was a huge stumbling block. Just students were stumbling over this issue. It was becoming a block in their spiritual journey, and this is the problem of evil, right? Many of you grew up in some kind of faith, right? And then something terrible happened, right? Something terrible happened, a death in the family or sickness or whatnot. And now you are struggling with how could this terrible thing happen and God let it happen? Or how can I put together this thing and the existence of a loving God, right? We cannot, it becomes impossible to reconcile in one's mind that God would allow such a thing, right? How can this evil coexist with a so-called loving God, right? So the problem of evil, right? The problem of suffering, why we suffer, why God allows these things to happen to us, right? So I decided to reframe the whole class around this problem of suffering, of evil. And I found 7 philosophers who themselves went through very profound traumatic events and how they emerged from it, how their faith was transformed or melted and rebirthed, right, from the traumatic experience. So they tell us, right, how their spiritual journey was either interrupted, right? In the case of Nietzsche, we're going to see that some journeys are interrupted, right? Other journeys regress, other journeys go deeper, right? All 7 philosophers went through something horrific, right? And they emerge with some kind of spiritual treasure or spiritual realization or spiritual death, right? So we're going to look at all 7 of these and see how they approach the problem of suffering, how they reconcile it or not, right, with their faith. So we're gonna set the, hold on. Yeah, I'm gonna give you the itinerary, right? So I usually tell students this is a class like kind of like a study abroad class, right? Because you're going to be traveling, but not only in space, you're also going to be traveling in time, right? So we're going to be studying texts as remote as the Republic of Iran, right? And we're going to go in the past as far back as, let's see, around like 2000 BC, right? We're going to be in very ancient text, right? Our first text, the Book of Job, is very ancient. It's around 1500 or maybe, yeah, around 1500 BC. If it was written by Moses, as some people believe, right? So we'll be traveling way back in time and then all the way to today, to 20th century, right? It's not quite today, a little earlier, but this is the most recent we have, right? So, and of course so this is traveling in space and in time, right? And we'll be traveling in space because we have texts from all over the world. We have texts that were written in Arabic, sorry, not Arabic, in Persian. We have texts written in Hebrew, in German, in French, right? So we have texts from all over the world that we're going to study. So you have to expect in a journey like this that there will be some culture shocks, right? And generational clashes. So prepare yourselves, right? Some of these texts are so remote from our culture, right? This is going to be difficult sometimes to grapple with the language, with the culture, with the prejudices, right? I remember when we studied Maimonides, who is a luminary, right? He's an amazing philosopher, and yet he's still caught up in some of the prejudices of his time. And people are up in arms in the classroom over this, guys. right? We are traveling in time, right? What they knew then is not what we know now. So we have to be ready, right, to be confronted with totally different worldviews, language block, cultural block, generational blocks, right? So this is excellent for us, right? To really be open to discovering completely different worlds than ours, right? This is why it's a study abroad class. You have to become, in a way, very flexible, very gracious to your hosts because they're not like you. Okay, so let's begin with the first stop. We're going to be journeying first. We're going to read the book of Job, which was supposedly written by Moses, who is one of the most ancient prophets of Israel, of the Jewish faith. So, book of Job, right? This is around 1500 BC, probably, the authorship, right? And with the book of Job, we're somewhere in the Middle East, Arabian Peninsula, right? Somewhere there, right? It could be anyone. Job, in fact, is not necessarily a Hebrew. He's a patriarch living at that time. Could be anywhere, Egypt, the present land of Israel, the Arabian Peninsula, anywhere around that area could be Job, right? So that's the first one. So Job, in fact, if you know the book, of course, you know that this is a man who was very religious, very pious. He did everything by the dot, right? He was very conscientious when it came to his faith. And yet, instead of receiving the blessings he was supposed to receive from God, he received the worst horrific nightmare trauma, right? Everything was taken away from him. All his wealth, all his children, his honor, his health. The only thing that remained was his wife, in order to pester him and to complain in his ear about the situation, right? So curse or blessing, right? So here we have Job, right, struggling. And the text that is written, right, is Job struggling with what just happened. And he is, in a way, at first he's silent and then he explodes. And the book of Job is the result, the fruit of this explosion. And it's an explosive book, right, of a man who is crying out in anger, in frustration, in despair to God about what is happening to him, and confronting God, and in a way, to a certain degree, judging him, right, putting him on the stand for doing this to him, right? So it's very interesting, very ancient text, very interesting text when it comes to a reflection, a profound reflection on suffering, right, and God's role, or not, right, in our suffering. So that's the first text. Then we'll move, we'll travel in time. We'll go about 3,000 years later, and we'll end up, but before we go there, I think there's a hand. Ahmed, you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, where are we going to find these texts, like the Book of Job, Mighty's book, and stuff?
So yeah, so all the books are in the QC bookstore. So you can, if you go there and you type in the class number, I have put them all there, and they're pretty accessible in terms of price. So you just buy them there. Yes, and we'll talk about that in a second. C, you have a question?
Yeah. Are we ever going to touch upon Eastern philosophy, like East Asian philosophy?
Sadly, not in this class. If, however, you take my 101, I'm doing the Upanishads, the Tao Te Ching. So there I'm doing extensive Eastern philosophy. So in that particular class, I'm doing it. It lent itself more to that class on Eastern philosophy that I'm teaching in 101 is a class on happiness. This is a class on despair. The Eastern, they're not too big into despair. So they tend to emphasize more bliss and happiness and serenity, right? So definitely, yes, look up that class. Actually, I'm teaching it this semester too. So if you're interested in joining it, I'm doing it on Tuesday, Thursdays at 3:10. So if you wanted to add that, you're welcome to come to that particular class. But good question. I agree. It would be nice to have. I always want to have everybody represented in my classes. But this particular class, it lent itself more to the Judeo-Christian Islamic viewpoint, because they are a little more gritty when it comes to despair and suffering. That's kind of their kind of their thing. So yes, so look up that other class on happiness. And I'm welcoming everybody, actually. It's a very small class. There is room for more people. Let me put a little plug for that class, Tuesdays, Thursdays at 3:10 to 4:25 at QC in person, right? And it's on happiness. So we are doing Eastern philosophy there. We're doing some, also some Muslim texts, Jewish texts, the book of Ecclesiastes we're doing. And then we're doing Nietzsche and Epictetus, the Stoics. So it's an interesting program, right? So I'm inviting anyone who wants to add a class, you can, including UC. Good question. Okay, so Goldstein. Yes. Oh, but Goldstein, if it starts at 4:20, it's no big deal. The class ends at 4:25. You can leave early. So Goldstein, talk to me after class. We can arrange this. Yes, I'm happy to have more students in that class because very small for now. So you're totally welcome to join that class too. And even better, drop this class and no, just kidding. This class is too big. Okay. All right. Next, second philosopher, we're going to travel in time away from the BC to the Middle Ages. And there we're going to go to southern Spain at the time of the Golden Age of Islam. If you recall the history of the Muslim Empire, you have this empire stretching, and we'll talk about this, from Iran, Iraq, present-day Israel, all of North Africa, and southern Spain, right? So we arrive in southern Spain during that time, right? And we're going to meet a philosopher there called Maimonides, who happens to be Jewish, but he's living in the Arab world. And in fact, all of his books are written in Arabic, right? So one has to wonder, is he an Arabic philosopher or a Jewish philosopher, right? Perhaps a little of both. So he also struggled immensely with suffering. His wife died very young. And then the brother that was supporting him financially also died, leaving him, with no financial support. Because in the context of the Middle Ages, the rabbis didn't work, they studied. Right? And so members of the family supported them. So he lost his livelihood and had to find, in a way, a trade, which he did. He did very well. He became a medical doctor, right? But in any case, he went through a lot of turmoil, including, of course, the persecution for being Jewish and so forth in the context of the Muslim world. So he wrote a magnificent book called The Guide to the Perplexed, which we're going to study, where he talks actually about rising above suffering. So for him, as human beings, we were created with reason. And our reason, in a way, is a door into divine wisdom. And as such, we can receive the divine light in order to help us move above our sufferings, to help us, in a way, get out of the entrapments of pain and suffering and, generational curses and so forth, right? So he's saying that actually as human beings, because we have this window on divine wisdom, this access to divine wisdom through our mind, we can rise above our suffering and get out of the messes that we create for ourselves. So it's a very interesting text also, and different approach, of course, from the book of Job. Then we'll stay still in the Golden Age of Islam. We shall move to Persia. So this is where Iran, Iraq are today, right? And there we shall meet Rumi, who is a Muslim poet this time. He's a poet. He's not considered a philosopher, but his poetry is philosophical, right? And in that beautiful poetry, we have a whole philosophy of suffering, right? Why suffering? And we're going to see that for Rumi, suffering should be welcomed. Suffering, in many ways, he says, is a gift from God to help purify us, right? So rather than against Maimonides, who says we can escape our sufferings, Rumi says, no, we need to embrace our sufferings, right? It's a very opposite view, right? Very interesting approach to suffering. Then we'll skip into the 19th century Germany with Nietzsche. And with Nietzsche, we have a turning point. Right? Up until then, all of the philosophers were unabashedly religious. They came from some kind of religious tradition. God was a given. With Nietzsche, we enter the era of the death of God, right? So Nietzsche actually is one of the first courageous voices to proclaim the end of religion and the end of divine authority. And so he's writing in the Enlightenment period. He's writing in a period in Europe where religion was being set aside. And he is in a way trying to find a new path, which for him is a path of joy, right? Through the suffering. So we're going to see that for Nietzsche, right? The suffering in our lives is not something we should escape. He agrees with Rumi in that, but it's something we should go through if we want to really become truly human beings, right? And we don't need God to assist us. We should have the courage to face life without some kind of promises of an afterlife. So he's inviting us really to face our suffering, to enter life, to embrace it in all of its darkness and luminosity without fear and without the crutch of religion, right? So we're going to see that also with Nietzsche. So C has a question. He's asking if philosophy is related to religion. They come from totally different worlds, right? But in a way, they sometimes often see the same thing. So it's interesting, right? So philosophy is it's a secular mindset, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about the philosophical perspective and how it's different from other perspectives. But philosophers, right, don't believe in a God, right? Philosophers just believe or sense that there is a mystery in life, right? And I'll come back to that in a second to go deeper. So in a way, they see the same thing, but they interpret it differently. Religion interprets this mystery as God. Philosophers say, no, it's just mystery. we cannot interpret, right? So we're going to talk about that in a second. After Nietzsche, we're going to study three authors, Marcel, Lévinas, Weil, all French, all 20th century. These I have chosen because in my view, they constitute the best responses to Nietzsche, right? What Nietzsche will tell us, right, in his works, in his rants, because he's a ranting kind of philosopher, right, is really something that we must take very seriously if we are really to deepen our spiritual journey, right? Nietzsche is unavoidable. His questions and his criticisms and his, how shall I put it, his blasphemies, right? You can say that, are all something that we should sit and listen to and really learn from, right? But it's very difficult to respond to Nietzsche, to respond to what he is saying, that religion is just mass delusion. People have created it to feel better in this world. It's just a crutch so we can get through life. It's very hard to respond to this because it might be true, right? It's very plausible that we would do something like that, right? So it will take us three philosophers to begin to respond to Nietzsche. So all three of them do this. First of all, we will study Gabriel Marcel, who is a French philosopher, all three, right? And we'll see that for Marcel, we're going to see how he responds to the fact that God is a delusion. And we're going to see the kind of argument he gives to Nietzsche. He has Nietzsche in mind when he's thinking about it. And then we'll see Emmanuel Levinas, who is a Holocaust survivor, so himself has gone through terrible trauma, right? And we'll see how his spiritual journey, in a way, constitutes a response to Nietzsche. And then finally, Simone Weil, also Jewish, although not practicing or not even, there's no pride in Simone Weil of being Jewish. She's not very interested in her Jewish roots, but she also in her own journey, right, will offer a response to Nietzsche. And here, see, by the way, with Simone Weil, she alludes to the Tao Te Ching and to the Upanishads, not the Upanishads, to the Bhagavad Gita. So Simone Weil is going to bring in a little bit of Eastern thought, which we'll talk about together briefly when we study her. Okay, that's the itinerary. Any questions on our itinerary? Okay. So now I will invite you to make sure you buy the books. They're all in the QC bookstore. If you're going to buy the books on your own, first go to the QC bookstore and make sure you see the cover so you buy the right book. If you buy another version of the book, you're going to be lost when it comes to the page numbers, right? So there are several versions of each one of these books, right? Several publishers. You want to get the one that's in the QC bookstore. So take a look first at the cover before you buy it on Amazon or whatever, right? Good. Okay, before we go into logistics, I want to go over briefly, since a lot of you are beginners when it comes to philosophy, I want to go over my 4-step initiation to reading philosophy. So 4-step initiation to reading philosophy. Okay, so now to respond to what C said earlier, right? What is philosophy? Is it different from religion? What's the difference, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about what is philosophy and why philosophers write in the way they do. Because you're going to notice right away as you start reading those books that they're not the same way. You cannot understand them as easily as when you're reading, I don't know, the newspaper or Facebook or any type of book, history, biology, physics, right? It's not the same thing. So I have to prepare you for this kind of writing so you don't get frustrated. So first of all, let's talk a little bit what philosophy is talking about. So I would summarize it like this, at least when it comes to these philosophers that we're going to study. Philosophy is the intuition, is the sense that there is a profound mystery surrounding us. In other words, yes, we are here, there's trees, there's people, there's cars, there's houses, but there's something more, right? So I'm wondering, how many of you have sensed this, that there's more to life than meets the eye, that there's more than just eating, drinking, going to bed, and waking up the next day, that there's something mysterious surrounding us? Put your hand in the screen or raise your hand. Okay, so a few of you. So already you have philosophical intuition, right? The philosopher is the one who senses that there is this amazing secret, that there is this amazing mystery that is just within reach, but yet out of our reach, right? And the goal of philosophers is to attempt to describe this experience and to bring the rest of us in connection with this experience. So the difficulty is, of course, describing an experience which is mysterious, which is out of our reach, right? And describing it with words. And so many philosophers, as they're writing, are actually struggling to describe what they're sensing, experiencing, going through, right? And so their writing is laborious and is convoluted and difficult to follow. And so when we read them, in a way, we are struggling along with them. So when you will read, so of course, the book of Job, Rumi, is going to be pretty accessible, although still the meaning will be hidden, right? Book of Job belongs, we'll see that next time, to the classification of wisdom books. So nothing is obvious. Everything is hidden. Everything has to be deciphered. And Rumi, of course, is mystical poetry, so everything also has to be deciphered. But then when you come to Maimonides, to Nietzsche, to Marcel, Levinas, the writing, you're going to read and not understand what you're reading, right? The reason for that is that they are talking about something which is way beyond the average human experience, and so it becomes difficult to follow, right? Because of that. Not because they're trying to be elitist, not because they're being jerks, not because they're trying to be superior, right? The reason their writing is so hard to decipher is that they are trying to help us experience something which is beyond the average experience of the human being. And it becomes difficult to describe something which is beyond the average experience of most human beings, right? And so we struggle with them. So hopefully that helps you understand at least why the readings we will come across are going to be not easily accessible. You will read and you will not understand. I'm predicting, right? Now, so that you feel better, so that you are able to navigate this difficulty, this challenge, I have conceived this 4-step initiation process so that when you are faced with these challenging texts, you don't give up in despair, right? So 4 steps. So the first step that I tell everyone that you need in order to read and to navigate these challenging texts is simply a pencil. Okay, first thing you need to navigate these difficult texts is a pencil. Why? I will tell you, right? First of all, let me find the text that I am also reading so you can see how I read. Click this one. Yes. Okay, so this is a random book. All my books are like this, right? If you look at the page, you will see that it is thoroughly underlined. There are things in the margin that you can't see very well because trying to see, find a better book. Yeah, here's another one, right? I am putting things in the margin, I'm circling, I'm underlining, I'm very actively reading these texts, right? All my books look like this, right? So why pencil? Pencil is very simple. As you're reading a text, which is for the most part inaccessible, it is good to have a pencil so that when you come across a small passage which makes sense, boom, you underline it, right? I like this sentence. I understand this, right? There will be passages, right, that you understand. Or you're reading and you want to, you understood and you want to respond enthusiastically, put an exclamation point, right, or a smiley. Or you have a question, it doesn't make sense. You circle it, big question, unhappy face, right? So you want to read like that. You want to read like a seeker. This is how I call it, right? Reading with a pencil is reading with a seeking spirit. Why? Because the book will only reveal itself to the degree that you seek it out. A book is like a person. If you don't seek it out, it's not going to open up, right? A book is like a beloved, right? If you're not seeking, if you're not trying, you're not gonna stay over there, right? So it's the same thing, right? You need to show your passion for the book, and the book will open up to you, right? So when you're reading with a pencil, underlining, annotating, asking questions, putting smiley faces everywhere, you are showing, you are engaging with the book. And as you engage with the book actually will open up in a way that it won't open up to other people. It's magic. Trust me, it's magic, right? So first thing you need, a pencil to underline all the passages that you understand, the passages that maybe you like, you don't understand, but it sounds nice, so you underline it. By the time you're done reading, you will notice how much you've gotten out of the text, right? Whereas if you don't use the pencil, it'll go in and out, right? That's the first thing. Second step, I want you to read, and this is kind of unusual, you won't have this step in other classes, but I want you to read with enjoyment. So let me explain why and what I mean by that. So first of all, let me ask you a question. How many of you had a class which you absolutely hated? You hated the professor and you hated the subject. Anybody had something like this? A wonderful experience like that? Okay, me too. I had an ethics class that I hated so much. I hated it so much. The only class I cheated in. I hated it. I couldn't even dignify the class by studying for it. I had such a loathing. And I ended up failing the class, right? So ethics, of all things, my specialty now. Right? So I know the feeling of hating a class so much that it's not happening, right? So notice when you hate something, how little you're able to absorb, how little you're able to learn. Why? Because hatred closes you off, whereas love opens you. When you love something, you're automatically good at it. You automatically absorb it, right? And so it's the same here. When you read the text, I want you to read it in a state of enjoyment or love, right? Ooh, I'm loving this. I'm reading this. Oh, I enjoy it so much. I don't understand a word, but yeah, this is so cool. I love it. I love the feeling of not understanding. That's how I want you to read, with enjoyment. In fact, we meet only once a week, so I want you to pick every week the best moment to do these readings. For example, Sunday morning when everybody is sleeping and you make a cup of coffee and you're sitting on your couch and now you're going to take out the book of Job, for instance, right? Or maybe Saturday night, very late when everyone is out and you're home, right? And you're going to calmly, right, put a cup of tea and then read your book, right? Or maybe you're in the subway traveling and this is your downtime. Now is the moment to center yourself and read these texts, right? So you want to really, really do read the text in a state of enjoyment. It's very important to read it in a state of enjoyment. And in fact, I'm so serious about this that I prefer that you read less of the text and enjoy it that you read the full assignment. So, for example, if you're a slow reader, some of us in the class are slow readers, and that's fine. If you happen to be a slow reader and you struggle with reading, that's perfectly fine. Read less than what is assigned, but enjoy it. The moment you stop enjoying, stop reading. Right now, if you're a fast reader, you have no excuse. You should read the whole book, right? But go at your own pace. Go at the pace where it still feels enjoyable. And when it stops feeling enjoyable, I prefer you stop reading. Because if you start to continue to read and get frustrated, it's going to be counterproductive. Okay, so that's the second step. Now see a few comments. So Peralta, I don't understand your question. So maybe after class we can talk about this. C, yes, absolutely. See, you got it, right? Your confusion is a process of learning. I want you to go through that moment of confusion because that is part of the learning process, so you totally understand what I'm doing. Very nice. Excellent. Good. So, no, that's the second step of initiation. Third step, urgency. What do I mean by that? Okay. When I conceived the class, I wrote the class with the purpose of making sure that every single one of you in the class would find something at some point to unblock your spiritual journey. All of us, to a certain degree, including me, by the way, we can reach roadblocks in our spiritual journeys where we stop growing, where we stop feeling, where we stop longing, right? Where we stop wondering. This is the spiritual journey, right? Growing, longing, wondering, all of these are part of a spiritual journey. A lot of us find roadblocks. And one of my goals for the class is that at one point, you will meet one philosopher who will give you a key to cross that wall, right? So I'm really expecting that by the end of the class, every single student in the class will have gotten something for them to help them continue their spiritual journey, to unlock that door, right? To shed light on that mystery, or maybe to heal that trauma, right? So I'm looking at a light, a key, a balm, right? This is what I'm aiming to offer you during this semester. I am expecting that every single one of you will leave with something, with a small treasure for you to be able to continue your journey. So this class, therefore, the readings, there is an urgency, right? You know where you are in your spiritual journey. You know if you're stuck or if you're not stuck or if you feel you can go further. You know where you are and you'll tell me about it at some point, right? But when you're reading, you should be reading like, oh my God, at any moment now, I'm going to turn the page and I'm going to have this epiphany and I'm going to have this revelation and I'm going to be set free and I'm going to fly and I'm going to be able to move forward. That's how you're reading. You see what I'm saying? You're reading and you're listening, of course, in the class, thinking, waiting, expecting at any moment a revelation, an epiphany. You're expecting the sky to open and a voice, right, for you to be able to move forward wherever you have gotten stuck, right? So that's why I talk about the urgency. When you're reading, you should be reading with a kind of frenetic heartbeat, right? At any moment now, I'm going to read that quote. I'm going to have that revelation, right? That's the third initiation. And finally, reading together. So there's three things you should never do alone. And if you catch yourself doing them alone, you have a problem. Number one, drugs. Number two, alcohol. Number three, philosophy. They're the same category. They're all toxic if taken too much, right? So if you find yourself drinking by yourself in the morning, yeah, get help. If you find yourself deciding to try a new drug by yourself, bad idea, right? You might jump out the window, nobody can save you, right? So it's the same with philosophy, actually. If you do philosophy alone, and by which I mean if you seek wisdom on your own, and you think that you can only rely on yourself for answers, you are going to crash so bad. You're going to be like the person who throws himself out the window after taking, what's this new drug that makes you do that? Acid, right? So it's probably not new anymore, is it? I'm still in the 90s with my drugs, my drug repertoire. Okay, so philosophy can be the same. Wisdom should never be acquired on your own. You should always be listening, opened up to other voices when it comes to your own acquisition of wisdom, to the quest for truth, to your journey, right? So philosophy is something you need to do together, and that's why in the class we're going to have moments of little group discussions where you're actually discussing together over the text in order to facilitate this togetherness, right? Okay, any question on the initiation? I hope you notice that when you read, you don't have to understand the text. I don't expect you to understand the text. What you need to understand are my lectures, right? That's the part you need to understand for the test. But the text, I just want you to experience, right? It's different. I want you simply to experience what it's like to be in the presence of a great mind. So it's normal when you're sitting in the presence of someone like Maimonides or Rumi or Levinas, it's normal that it's way above you. And I want you to experience this. I want you to experience the feeling of being in the presence of greatness, right? And then in class, we will explain, we will clarify, we will make things clear, right? So that's how I want you to read. Just enjoy being in the presence of that worldview, of that perspective, of that philosopher. Even if it's way above you, enjoy that, right? It's like when you go to the beach and you jump in the waves, right? It's boring if there's no waves, but when there's a big wave coming, right? You know, enjoy that. Okay, any questions on the initiation before I continue in the logistics? Okay, all right, logistics, workload. So, obviously attendance is important, although I do understand that because of the situation of COVID, some of you might have to stay home sometimes because you're either sick or were in presence of someone who was sick. So I know that some of you will miss class, which is why I've made any assignments very little points, so that if you have to miss an assignment or if you have to miss a group discussion in class, you don't lose that many points for missing class, right? Especially since we're only teaching once a week. So and also at the end of the semester, I give 2 bonus COVID points, right, to make up for any absences and so forth. So I'm not gonna, don't come to me and say, oh, can I do this late, whatever. Just accept the loss of points. It's not much. It's not going to influence you. You can miss 2 weeks of classes and miss only 2 points, right? So I've made every assignment very low cost for you if you miss it because of sickness and so forth. So, and then you have the 2 extra points. So obviously coming to class is important because of the group discussion, which is graded. So you have to be there to get that point. If you can't be there, you lose, but only 1 point. So, okay, attendance. Okay, the main assignment you'll have throughout the semester, each time we meet, basically. Each time we meet, you have something called a reading assignment. So let me explain that. Okay, the reading assignment is as follows. 1 page, single-spaced, 1 page, single-spaced, 4 paragraphs. And it's made up of 2 questions and 2 critiques. So this is basically a reading response. So anytime you have a reading, right? If you look on the syllabus, it's basically every time we meet. Before coming to class, you need to read those pages. So September 13, the book of Job, pages 5 to 75, you read that before class. And you do the reading assignment on that reading, and you hand it in before class, right? So reading assignment is basically you wrestling with the text. You reading the text, stumbling on the text, having questions about what does this mean, what does this word mean, what does he mean by this sentence, why is he contradicting himself, and so forth. So you're kind of like already asking questions to the text. You're wondering what things mean, you're trying to decipher the text. And as you ask your question, I want you to try to respond to it. I want you to try to answer it. Use your imagination. Well, maybe he means that, maybe she means that, right? So that's the first 2 paragraphs, 2 questions, and you trying to figure out an answer to those questions. Second 2 paragraphs, 2 criticisms. This time you understand it, but you disagree. Here, I don't like the way he's saying that, and I disagree with this. You tell me that, right? So that's you really wrestling with the text, trying to understand it, agreeing, disagreeing, reacting to the text. This is the reading assignment, and you need to do 2 things with the reading assignment. You need to hand it into the drive, once I put the folders back in, right? You need to hand it in before class starts, right? So late assignments are not accepted, ever. Right? Now, again, if you're sick, you're going crazy, you can't do it, it's okay, it's just 1 point, right? So I've made it so that nothing will cost you, you know, your life. So, but they add up, so you want to regularly do them. So I don't accept late assignments, has to be put in the Google Drive before class starts, and I want you to keep a copy for you and bring to class, because you will use it in your group work. As soon as we meet, every class that we meet in person, first 20 minutes, you'll be in groups. And in those groups, I will ask you to go over these questions and these criticisms together as a group, share what you found, make sure the group responds to you. Maybe they disagree with you, maybe they can help you, and you're kind of going over these, you're wrestling now with it, with the text together. So that's the reading assignment. Any questions on the reading assignment, which is your regular work? So by the way, there's no right and wrong, right? You can be totally off in your interpretation of the text, okay, right? I just want you to start struggling with it. Like C said before, right? This is all about an exercise in confusion, which is the beginning of knowledge. Very good. Okay. So because the class is hybrid, right? We're meeting once a week only instead of twice a week. You have some extra work to do at home. This work is basically to listen to the introductory lectures. Yes, Michael, this is submitted online in the Google Drive, not in person. I have a no contact policy, right? So everything online. So back to the, okay, so the hybrid class, right? So we have the class in person, but then you also have some lectures, extra lectures to listen to. Usually they're introductory lectures to the philosophers, right? So biographical elements and so forth. So each time we do a new philosopher, you will have one of those lectures to listen to. So when we start Job or Maimonides or Rumi, each time we begin, we have first of all that lecture to listen to online, right? And connected to that lecture is what I call the audio questions. So this is questions that I will ask you to make sure you listen to that lecture. In your syllabus, last page, you have a list of all of the audio questions. So Job, Maimonides, Rumi. So what you do for the audio questions, so that's the other assignment, you give me half a page, single-spaced, of an answer to the audio question. And you hand this in, right, each time we have a new author. So for example, September 13, new author, Book of Job, that is due. September 27, new author, Maimonides, audio question is due. Okay? It's based on that lecture. It's my way of seeing that you listen to that introductory lecture. Any questions on that particular assignment? So that assignment is probably going to be every 2 weeks, right? Since we have 2 weeks for each author. Ahmed, go ahead.
Are these also due right before class, just like the reading assignments?
Yeah, right before class. Very good. Yes. So this, you put it in the drive, right? Before class. Because I look at them. While you guys are in your groups, I'm looking at your reading assignments, looking at your audio question. Excellent. Okay, so that's the second regular assignment, semi-regular, since it's like every 2 weeks, right? Not every week. And then the last thing is the test and the essay. So the test is going to be maybe once a month, I think, right? And we'll talk more about the test. But for now, here's how you should already start preparing, right? So that you can do well. 2 things I will always ask for the test. First thing you need to have for a good test is good notes, right? So when we start teaching on Monday, or sorry, next Monday we meet, right? You need to make sure you take the most prolific notes possible. This is the best way to succeed in the class. Every word comes out of my mouth is on your paper, right? So that you want to have as detailed notes as possible, because the test will be based on your notes and will be based on how much you have gotten from the lecture. So the more you get, the more you write down from what I'm saying, the better your test answers. So from the start taking really good notes. And the other thing I will ask in the test is quotes from the books. So these we do in class. So make sure you come to class with your books ready to underline, right? So that anytime I'm reading a quote in class and commenting the quote, you're underlining it because you know it's going to be on the test, right? Anytime I say something in the lecture and I'm quoting something in the context of my lecture, you're highlighting that quote so you can put it in your test answer. So you need 2 things to get good on the test: the quotes and good notes, right? So yes, the tests are open book. You do them at home and you hand them in online. So you do it by yourself with all your notes. This is what COVID has contributed to your lives. I didn't used to do that. So Epstein, the tests and assignments, all the assignments, all the tests, everything you hand in is in the Google Drive and on Blackboard. Remember I showed you in the left-hand menu, you have tab, you can click on that and boom, you're into our Google Drive folder. Does that answer your question, Epstein? Where is Epstein?
Yes, but I'm having trouble finding the folder. Oh,
Yes,
there it is.
No, it disappeared.
I just found it.
Is there something in it though?
What?
Is there, you see something?
I'm gonna check. I had it open. I have to go find the drive syllabus.
Because I kind of erased it when I was showing you. I don't know if you noticed.
No, it's not there. So I guess you're gonna put the
Yes.
drive back up there. Okay.
Yes, I erased it. I don't know what I did. Anyways, okay, so that's the test. Any questions on the tests? On how, we'll talk more about it, but, and your test questions, by the way, in your syllabus, right? You can already prepare as we go along, right? They're all here on the last page of the syllabus. So you can already, as you're taking notes, you can already start preparing your tests, right? So everything is transparent. Okay, the essay. Oh, sorry, Ahmed, you have a question. Go ahead.
For the test questions, how long are you expecting for each answer to be?
Yes, about a page, single spaced per answer. So one page, single spaced per answer. So now you know everything about the test. Okay. Single spaced per answer. So it's a pretty detailed answer, right? Which is why you want to really have good notes. Any other questions on the test? Okay. Okay, the essays, the last thing, do the same day as the test, once a month, right? Essay is 1.5 pages, single spaced. The essay is basically you beginning to reflect on your spiritual journey. So in the essay, I want you to talk about where you are. Are you stuck? Are you free? Are you dead? Are you alive? Where are you, right? Tell me about what happened to bring you where you are, right? And then I want you to connect what we did in class to where you are. Is there anything in what we did in class that can help you move forward, or maybe brings you back, or maybe kills you? I don't know, right? Could be positive, could be negative, could be neutral. I had a student, he would systematically write the same thing. He would say, I am now comfortably numb, right? And so he was just numb the whole class, and he didn't move an inch the whole class. He was still numb. Every time he would write, I am comfortably numbed, I am not moving, and it feels good, right? That's fine. So you can go forward, backwards, be stuck, go up, go down. I don't care as long as you're writing something. So is there anything in what we studied that those 2 weeks, right, which can illuminate your journey, or maybe makes it worse, right? Maybe makes you even more stuck. It doesn't matter. Tell me how you are reacting to what we are studying, what we studied during that time. Amoroso, question.
Yes, so are we, for the first essay, going to basically talk about our spiritual journey before the point of the class and then continuously building on it through other essays?
Exactly, right? So you should be, hopefully you're evolving, maybe not, doesn't matter, right? As long, but you're kind of keeping track. It's kind of like we're on a boat, right? And you're, whoa, sorry. Turn this off. Okay, it's like you're on a boat and you're traveling, right? And hopefully you're traveling inwardly too. And that's what I want to hear in those essays, right? So it's a personal, right? The essays are pretty personal. They're about you, right? And how you're progressing, how you're moving forward, or along in the class. Ahmed, and then Mishai.
No, sorry, I just forgot to put my hand down.
Mishai?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, so the tests are just going to be 2 questions that we have to respond to?
Yes.
And they're already on the syllabus, right?
Yes.
Those are the ones.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
No unpleasant surprises. Everything is predictable. Unlike COVID, right? Where everything is up in the air. In this class, everything is predictable. Okay, great. Good. So I think I covered everything. Let me see what I put in there. Yeah, I think I covered everything. So briefly about the COVID situation. So like Please be flexible this semester. We don't know if we're going to be in a classroom or online or which classroom. And that's okay, it's fine, it's an adventure, right? You are asked to wear masks throughout the class, and we'll have distance. I'm still thinking whether I will wear a mask or not, because I heard about that teacher in California who made like half of her class sick by not wearing a mask. So I might experiment with teaching with a mask and see what happens. This is the only time you'll see my face. Enjoy it. So I don't know yet. I'm gonna think about that. And that's it. Yeah. Any last questions before we conclude? Okay, so I want to see the SEEP students and maybe also Tejada, who had that question in the chat that I didn't understand. And the rest of you can go. And I will see you next time, September 13th. Okay, by the way, sorry, don't go yet. Here's the assignments you have to do for next time. I'll put it also in the announcement. So first thing you'll do in preparation is buy the books. That's the first thing you do. Number two, I want you to listen to the lecture on YouTube, right? This is introductory lecture introducing the book of Job. So this is me teaching another class, right? Recorded, introducing the book of Job. So you listen to that. These lectures will be outside of the in-person lectures. You listen to that. Once you've listened to that, you do the audio question. Then you do the reading, the assigned reading. And then you do the reading assignment. All of this before September 13th at 4:45 p.m. Okay, so that's what you need to be doing in preparation for next class, right? You need to, and I'll put the lecture up right after this one. So now that I have this one, I can open up a new playlist for us. So, okay, that's it. Any questions? If you don't have any more questions, you can go. SEEK students, please stay behind. The rest of you can go. And whoever still has questions, you can also stay behind and ask your question. Yes, I'm going to put it in the announcement so you have it. You have a record of it. Okay, guys. Bye, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording.